As the relationship between Israel and Saudi Arabia and perhaps other Arab nations gets warmer, tensions continue to be raw between Israel and Palestinians living in Gaza.
The Gaza Health Ministry says that a Palestinian on this day was shot and killed by Israeli forces. The Palestinian apparently died while approaching the border fence along the Israeli-Gaza border. It comes as the head of the IDF says Israel will not scale back its response to protesters amid growing criticism over Israel's use of force. i24 News senior defense correspondent Chai Ben-Ari has more.
Yes, well, clashes continuing today on the Israel-Gaza border at 4 different locations, with several hundred Palestinians clashing with Israeli forces positioned here along the border. There was at least one fatal consequence as a result of this, one Palestinian being killed, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry, and the Israeli army actually releasing a certain video providing some context for this particular incident, showing a number of Palestinians basically breaking through the Gaza border fence, momentarily stepping into Israeli territory, then quickly returning to Gaza. We understand that the IDF actually responded to this incident with gunfire. That is not shown in the video. And this, we understand, was the same incident, in fact, in which that same Palestinian was killed, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. So this is perhaps similar to some of the events that happened on Friday. In terms of the level of violence that we did see today, it didn't really recall the same levels that we saw on Friday. We're talking about a much smaller scale, but it could indeed pick up again this Friday when we see people not necessarily going to work, but more free to join the protests. And we could very well see thousands again gathering at these different rallying points at different locations across the border. We will keep you updated on this situation as it progresses. Chai Ben-Ari, i24 News.
Let's bring in Craig Snyder, President and CEO at the World Affairs Council of Philadelphia. And Craig, it certainly is a different sort of image when you see Palestinians, even in that grainy video, trying to break the border fence and then going through, and you find out that they were one of the ones who got shot. But does it really matter at all in terms of the world's public opinion of Israel, in terms of what the Palestinians are doing if they're getting killed?
I think the world's public opinion is not going to be so nuanced as the IDF might hope with the release of these videos. The broader image that's being created is of at least relatively peaceful protesters who are not armed, at least certainly not armed to the same extent as the Israeli military on the other side of the fence. And so, you know, tomorrow is the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King. I think the greatest fear Israel could have, in some ways, other than obviously a weapon of mass destruction, but the greatest fear it could have politically would be to have mass, truly nonviolent protest on that Gaza border and have to figure out how to respond to it without looking like the Alabama state troopers on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma. That's not something Israel wants or really can abide politically.
So, Craig, I guess you're saying that Israel has no chance of winning the PR war with these images coming out of the Gaza border. So, but Israel, should it even try to win this war, or just take care of the security of its citizens, or not make any kind of effort of this kind?
Well, you know, there's a question of the immediate security protection, the immediate safety of people at the border versus potentially, at least, the longer-term question of security for Israel as a nation as a whole if the world's public opinion really turns dramatically against Israel. I think, in other words, the calculation is not as simple as it might appear on the surface. There's a potential danger to Israel's security from what the world perceives, rightly or wrongly, what the world perceives as an overreaction to this. Look, the fact is that the population in Gaza lives in desperation, and that's largely the fault of the Gazans, the Palestinians' own government, in the form of the radical group Hamas. But Israel is a player that is going to get blamed for a lot of that misery, no matter what happens on the ground in Gaza. And this, again, this form of protest is symbolically very important.
And Craig, these clashes and the violence and the death toll, how does this sidetrack the story that we started the broadcast with, and that is Saudi Arabia's crown prince recognizing Israel's right to exist? There would seem to be some momentum behind that statement that could convince other Arab nations to follow suit. So the Palestinian conflict, though, does that get in the way?
You know, there really are two levels that are going on here simultaneously, and you're quite right. They pull in opposite directions. What the Crown Prince said is historic in the Orwellian doublespeak world of Middle East politics. Even hinting at recognizing Israel, even though Israel's already been there for 70 years, just hinting at it is a major breakthrough. And it comes when there are other kinds of signs like that between Saudi Arabia and Israel. Perhaps a small thing, but not small really in terms of the history, is allowing Saudi Arabia allowing flights by Air India to cross Saudi airspace into Israel. So there really is positive movement in that way. But the Palestinian issue remains obviously very much unresolved. And as the King of Saudi Arabia showed today, there's going to be at least rhetorical deference towards Palestinian rights that continue to go on in the Arab capitals until and unless there's some kind of political solution there. So there may be a kind of firewall that the Palestinians on the ground in Gaza are able to create that stops the progress between the countries that otherwise would go a lot further.
Craig Snyder, President and CEO at the World Affairs Council of Philadelphia. Craig, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And the timing of this talk does seem like it's significant, the fact that the Palestinian conflict does seem to be so tense at a time when there's so much hope because of the Saudi Crown Prince.
What I'm mostly amazed of is that we just had a conversation about the situation in Gaza and Saudi Arabia and the Palestinians and the Israelis without even mentioning Mahmoud Abbas.
Right.
What does it mean about his future?
Yeah, his relevancy seems to be diminishing by the day.